Hey everyone, it's John. In today's Legal Briefs with Terry from Firearms Legal Protection, I want to talk about the parking lot shooting from Florida. This has been on the news, and the video on the main channel has obviously done very well. It's got about 300,000 views on that one. And in that one, go watch that video. We're going to put a link to it. If you have not watched this gunfight that went down, the shooting between Michael Draka and Mclaughlin, the basics of that, Michael Draka did not like that that Marquez and his girlfriend had parked in a handicap spot without handicap decals. So he pulls in, sees that, argues with McLaughlin's girlfriend, and kind of yips at her a little bit for parking in a wrong spot. McLaughlin comes out, doesn't say a word to him. Everything I've said everything I've read anyway, said there were no words that were exchanged between them. Comes up and pretty violently pushes him down. Draka pulls a gun, points it at him, and as McLaughlin starts to back up, not a ton, but a step and a half, kind of backs up low, and Draka shot him. Now this one has become controversial because the county sheriff has said because of Florida's Stand Your Ground hearing that he can't charge him. State prosecutor's still checking out charges. I want to talk about it with Terry because some people took me to task that this was 100% clearly a justified shooting. I think it's not nearly so cut and dried. So today on John's Briefs, let's talk about it. So, first of all, let's establish some baseline. What people call stand your ground hearing in Florida,
right?
That's a popular term, but it's really not a legal term.
Correct.
It's really a defense immunity hearing.
Exactly. Did the person who did the shooting have a justifiable reason for what they did? And
right.
That's really what it comes down to.
So in the immunity hearing in Florida, and this is a unique thing to Florida, okay? So only Florida has this hearing, what is called a stand your ground hearing. But let's be real. Once Draka was pushed to the ground, his ability to retreat was removed. So there's no duty when you don't have the ability, and therefore, some people are like, oh, they got to repeal the stand your ground law. Stand your ground had nothing to do with this shooting.
Exactly.
And so, okay, fine, we've established that. But what the immunity hearing says in Florida is that the prosecution must prove that there is clear and convincing evidence that a crime was committed. Now, that's not quite the standard beyond a reasonable doubt. The attorneys are going to say 95% for a conviction, but it might say 70% or so that we're pretty sure this is a crime, and so we want to prosecute, and the defense can ask for a hearing, and if they can't showcase that, then it gets shelved completely.
Correct.
So it really has nothing to do with stand your ground, but with a justification defense.
Exactly. And, people use stand your ground again, and I think it's just a political term that they're using to try and, take our ability to protect ourselves away. That's
right.
Really what I believe as it relates to what's going on in this case.
So let's get that out of the way. This had nothing to do with stand your ground. It as a legal doctrine, right, of a no duty to retreat. And the hearing is really a defense immunity hearing, which is a unique thing in Florida, which makes the prosecution kind of go halfway there. Do I have enough evidence to proceed or not? Okay? So let's talk about this case in particular. Tell me what you saw when you watched that, Terry.
Pretty much as you described it. The interesting thing is you see a man that interjects himself into something that is, and I'm going to use the word petty. This is ridiculous to argue about a parking space. But if you look at the video, he gets out, he points his finger, I don't know what he's saying, he appears to be very angry, and you see the boyfriend of the driver come out. As he comes out, and I'm getting, put yourself in this position, some man is, in front of the door of your significant other's vehicle, your girlfriend, your wife, etc., and he's doing this. I don't think that this gentleman reacted properly.
No, I mean, to push him was wrong. I mean, to just walk up and shove him to the ground that's assault.
It's assault.
And he would have been charged with assault.
He would have been charged with assault.
But he's dead.
But it doesn't rise to the level of when you can use lethal force. And that's the part. If you look at this, and what a good prosecutor is going to do, they're going to look at the whole thing, but they're going to break it down in terms of moments, not just seconds. So at this moment, what happened? At the next moment, what happened? And you're right, there was a push. And when that push happened, um, his name again,
Draka, Michael Draka.
Mr. Draka pulls his firearm out. And that's where you really have to dice things down. When he pulls his firearm out, what does the other gentleman do at that point? Does he continue to charge?
Mm-hmm.
No. Does he just stand there? No. He actually retreated. And because he retreated in those moments, notice I again said moments, not seconds. In those moments, Mr. Draka then had a decision to make. And that's what it's going to come down to, in my opinion. Was Mr. Draka at that moment in imminent fear of death or great bodily harm?
And so I think there's a couple of totality of circumstances things here that we got to consider. Number one, again, go read the news stories. The owner of the convenience store where this happened said that Draka had been in his store, had been problems for that parking spot, and had accosted other people in the past. There's even a couple that say he was using racial slurs when he was doing that. Now you go, that doesn't have anything to do with whether he was justified in the moment. Oh, really? Does that have to prove anything about his mindset? Did Mclaughlin hear him using racial slurs at his girlfriend? I don't know those questions, but those are going to come into play. And his previous conduct is 100% discoverable and admissible.
Absolutely.
It's not going to go unnoticed, guys. So you got to recognize that your conduct beforehand. So if you strut around like a peacock because you're the enforcer, man, that's a problem. So this started here because he decided to insert himself and here's the thing, guys. You ever heard the phrase, don't start none, won't be none?
Exactly.
And so here's the thing. My friend John Murphy from FBF Training, he says when the gun goes on, the ego goes off. You can't be the one who's going to defend the parking spot rights of disabled Americans, okay? That's the kind of stuff that can get you into legal heat later. Now, let's talk a minute about the justification of the use of deadly force. So, the push from Mclaughlin is assault, okay? That was a crime. He should have been charged with that crime. He won't be because he's dead, all right?
And if I push you right now because
Sure.
I didn't get your permission, that's assault.
Yeah, that's assault. Now, obviously,
Same thing. It may have been a little harder, but it doesn't rise to the level where you can pull out your firearm right now and shoot me.
Right. So if we're getting in an argument, if we're arguing, right, maybe yipping words, and I go, man, I don't know that, and I pushed him with my finger, like, that's assault. Okay?
Right.
Now, is anybody going to charge that as assault or battery, depending on the state statute or whatever? No. Nobody's going to charge that as assault, but technically it meets the definition of the term. Now, it was a particularly egregious assault. Young, strong man pushes an older guy. Now, he wasn't that old. He's 47, I think he was.
Okay.
And another thing, as I watched the video, you notice that that Drake is able to lift himself off the ground after the shooting is done without putting a hand down. He's able to stand up from the ground without assistance and without using his hands. That's something that medical doctors will look at and say he's in decent to good physical health if he can do that. So the argument is, well, he might be frail and all those things is going to get tossed out. And then guess what? If he wants to make that argument, now he's got to go talk to his doctors and he's going to have 1,000 doctors' records in there to prove that that was a disparity of force issue. How much is that going to cost?
It's going to cost a significant amount of money. You're talking expert witnesses, and especially when they show up, they first of all have got to go through your entire records,
Right.
And then not only the cost per hour for that, but there's thousands of dollars a day to sit in court and wait on the opportunity to take the stand.
Right.
It's a lot of money.
So those things are a part of it. Now, I as a trainer, and I want to talk to you as the attorney, I hear people pretty frequently, and I've heard trainers say, don't draw your firearm unless you're ready to shoot someone. So if you draw it, you better start shooting. And I think it looks to me like that might have been part of the problem here. That he felt like, because I drew the firearm, I have to use the firearm. And quite frankly, that could get him sent to prison, and it, at the very least, is going to cost him tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. Is there a time to draw and point a firearm but not shoot it?
Absolutely. And again, you've got to be trained, as you said, the
Trained.
proper way. I pull my gun and the threat is no longer there. So you're running at me with a knife, I pull my gun, you stop and you turn around and go the other way. Even if you start backing away, the threat is over at that point. I mean, again, it comes down to moments, not seconds, but moments.
Yeah.
And within that moment, were you in imminent fear?
So when he says moment, so he's speaking lawyer, okay? Moment, you and I might use the word instant. In that instant, at that one point of time, is this what is going on. And yeah, we're going to splice it down to that instant, that point of time. And so the way that I always put it with people is, you understand, it's pretty clear to most people, if a police officer draws a gun and points it at somebody and says, drop it, or they point it and say, show me your hands. This is a good thing if they show hands, and then
Right.
if the officer were to go, well, I drew my gun, I got to shoot him, with the guy with the hands in the air, we would justifiably be incensed at that.
Exactly.
So same thing. Am I okay with Drake in that moment being pushed down, big strong man? Oh no, I don't have any skills to do that. This guy is an imminent deadly threat. I am just about to be in fear of my life. Drawing that gun and saying, get away from me, I would have probably said, fine, I get it. That's a good thing in that moment. But having the wherewithal to go, oh, he's listening to me, and to keep pointing that gun and saying, back up, get off me, dude.
Exactly.
And then as he continues to back up, because he's like, whoa, what happened? If he had not pulled that trigger, popped himself up like he did 6 seconds later, got on the phone with 911 and said, hey man, this guy just assaulted me in a parking lot, then we would be having a totally different discussion here.
And did you hear what you said? I don't know if you even caught it. You said about to be.
Right.
And that's that moment in time.
That imminent.
Yes, I'm about to be. It's not I'm in, I'm about to be. And if you're about to be in, you're not in it. And I know that sounds like I'm playing lawyer.
But it matters.
But it matters.
It matters.
And it's going to be spliced into those moments.
And so there is, and I know some people get frustrated with me because they say, well, so I'm supposed to parse out exactly if he's coming or going or whatever. Yes. Last night at the seminar, we had a couple of really prominent, good California defensive law attorneys in the house for the seminar, and I asked them and said, will the jury expect and require of you to be acting reasonably with a gun in your hand? Objectively, reasonably. And he said, absolutely, 100%. So wait a minute, just because I'm amped up, that doesn't remove the requirement for me to be acting in an objectively reasonable manner, an irrational, in my right mind manner? No, you have to. So do I need to parse, wait a minute, do I actually have to shoot here? Now, would it have been different if Mclaughlin had advanced? So
Yes.
he pushes him to the ground, guy pulls his gun, Mclaughlin Steele comes after him, and he shoots him while he's moving towards him. If he was moving towards him, totally different discussion. I would have been the one saying, totally justified shooting. In that moment, in that instant, totally fine. But because he's backing up, do you have to be able to see that? Yes.
Absolutely. And I 1,000% agree with you.
So how do you think this is going to go in civil court?
I'm not sure the amount of money that Mr. Draka has at this point, but he's going to lose, in my opinion, a tremendous amount of money.
I think he's ruined financially.
Absolutely. First of all, you've got to find an attorney who is going to want to represent you, because if you have no money,
Right? They're going,
yeah, and you don't get a public defender in civil court. People don't understand that.
Right.
So you want to take my freedoms, I get a public defender, worst case. You want to take my money, I'm on my own.
Right.
So let's put that out there. I don't know what assets he has or doesn't have, and quite honestly, he might not be worth suing. You don't know. I mean, listen, you can sue anybody for anything. The problem is collecting.
Right.
So if you get a $10 million judgment, the guy's only worth $5,000, you've wasted your time.
But is it possible that the family of the deceased will sue out of spite just to make him pay all the money out and to prove a point?
It's possible.
Possible.
And here's the other part. You may find some lawyer that wants to get his or her
name in
name
the
out
paper.
there, and they'll take it on and go from that point. So,
But I mean, recognize that he's paying an attorney right now $300, $400, $500, $600 an hour to sit with the sheriff who decided, oh, I can't do anything about it, which isn't his job. His job is to put a file on the prosecutor's desk.
exactly.
The sheriff doesn't charge anybody. Okay, it's a prosecutor that charges people. So in my opinion, it feels to me like the sheriff's maybe scoring political points here. But the state prosecutor is going to have the defense attorney sitting across his desk going, or her desk going, hey, this is why I don't want you to charge this person. This is why I shouldn't. Again, at $300, $400, $500 an hour. So, a little plug. This is why I'm a member of Firearms Legal Protection. And obviously, we love the way that you guys do business. But I have a question. I know a couple people have asked. If, for instance, that Mr. Draka was a member of a program like Firearms Legal Protection, would his criminal and civil defense attorney costs be covered?
Yes, and let me explain to you why. If he's charged with this particular crime, we don't make the decision by looking at the video in this particular case because, again, as you stated, it's a close call.
Mm-hmm.
If he's charged with it, and this is clearly someone can look at this and say, this could be protecting myself or protecting others, of course we're going to cover him. Same thing with the civil side, okay? If he's sued civilly, we would cover him as well. We don't make that determination, and let me be very clear. If I run into 7-Eleven, put a mask on,
Right.
and rob somebody, I'm obviously committing a crime. That's an easy one for us right there to say, nope, not going to happen,
Right.
we're not going to cover you. Situation like this, the argument could be made that this was self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
And the bar is very high in a criminal case. The beyond a reasonable doubt, to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was not justified, is, rightly so in American jurisprudence, a very high bar.
it is. And it's not, and remember, it's not on him to prove beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
It's on the prosecutor to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did something. And people, lose that part of our system all the time. He doesn't have to prove anything. The prosecutor has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt
Right.
that he committed a homicide in this case.
So I think that a couple things that I want you to see is that, number one, I want you to act legally, okay? And I want you to act morally and train to the point that you recognize when to take someone at gunpoint versus when to shoot someone. That's an incredibly important distinction. And the mindset that says if you draw the gun, shoot them is wrong. It could land you in incredible trouble. You have to know the difference between the time to shoot and the time to draw. Now, they might compress down into one. Oh, no, that threat is coming. It's not imminent. It's immediate. I'm just going to draw and shoot because I have to in this moment. But if you don't have to, man, far less to describe. When I held him at gunpoint, he ran off. I called you, cops. Okay, fine. Number two, recognize this is going to change the rest of your life. If you have to use a defensive firearm, it's going to change the rest of your life. So use it reticently. Use it only as a tool of last resort to save your life.
Right.
And number three, this is why I say, man, this is why I'm a member of Firearms Legal Protection, because I think that it's valuable to have. There's a deal for active self-protection members. Hit the link in the description. It's for the single plan. It's discounted. It's cheaper than
All
you
the
can get
plans
it.
are discounted.
All plans. Hey, look, they got them all now. When we first started, it was just the first one. Yay. I like the Premier plan personally. That's the one that I think is the better one. Covers you in all 50 states, wherever you are, if coverage is offered. And man, I think that's really valuable because for what, $20 a month or less, you are, you're avoiding thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars of lawyers' fees if you ever have to use it. That's cheap stuff. Guys, man, I know this one's been controversial, but I think we need to learn from it as self-defenders so then that way we don't put ourselves in the situation that Drake did, and therefore we don't have his consequences. So, Terry, thanks so much, man.
Thank you. And if I could just say to your audience, moments matter, just like you're saying.
Moments matter. Ooh, that's a good one.